co-founder of Manaki, and welcome to Real Talks on this beautiful day in Tamaki Makaurau. It's my pleasure to welcome Luke Ryan. Luke, welcome.
Yeah, kia ora, Andy. How you going, man?
Kia ora. I'm a bit tired today, but that's all right. Too much cricket watching, too much getting up early in the morning.
Yeah.
How about yourself? There's a beautiful piece of art you've got behind you there.
Yeah. It's always good to start with a place where you love being with art. I'm definitely a collector as well where I can, and it's something that I've started a number of years ago actually. Working out.
Do you remember the first piece of art that you collected?
Yeah, I do, and I actually didn't know how to connect with art. Basically, I just thought it looked really nice. And I remember talking to someone saying, how do you connect with art? Like thinking it's some special, technique that you've, been taught by someone else. And simple answer was, it's whatever it means to you. And that's where it began. I was like, I started saying, well, this is my story and this is how I think this art connects with me. And and off I went.
It's pretty awesome. How long ago was that?
About 15 years ago, actually, coming through, and it's just something that I, just makes me work out how I can connect with art, opposed to a lot of people are like, oh, what does it mean? What does it mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, for me, it was like, okay, cool, that works for me. I'm connected to that, and if that makes sense, I'd like to, be a holder of that for however long it stays with me.
Now, super interesting question, because I think a number of people might ask this.
Mm-hmm.
Is your relationship with your art collections
mm-hmm.
and pieces different with the physical pieces that are on the wall and the digital ones that are in your computer or in your wallet?
Yeah, good question. No, it's the same. It's the same. It's that experience and connection of what it means to you. Now, it is, it is easier if you're holding it and seeing it, just from a sensory standpoint, that if you've got it on the wall, it's potentially framed, you can connect with it easier. And it's just the simple way I say, some people like to buy a book and some people can read it on a laptop. And so
it's interesting though, eh?
That is really interesting.
Because people like you and like who else in the series that I've interviewed or kōrero with, Brooke, Jerome, Janine, you're all ahead of the curve. You're the early adopters, and, I think about for example, my wife she just can't she's trying to get her head around, okay, so like, where do we display it? And I say, well, it's in your heart, and that's how you feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in your imagination, right? And she's like, yeah, but I want to see it on the wall.
Yeah, it's a really valid point that she brings, and it's because there's communities in the cryptosphere, in the NFT, that once you connect with those communities, you start to almost find your place. And so, yes, you can have this NFT art and that you've connected with, and you think it looks, hey, it looks cool, I like it, and that's why I've chosen to buy it. And that's okay. And then the next question, a lot of people say, what do I do with it now? I've got this, basically this image, this digital image, but the piece that's missing, and actually I had this conversation with someone last night, was I didn't realize there was a community underneath it. And once I found that community, I actually realized where the value of it was.
That's quite.
And there's thousands of people, right? There's thousands of people in a community. You look at our cousins, the Fluff, they've got this, in their Discord, they've got, 30, 40,000 people.
The Discord's pretty crazy, eh?
Great. And it's just like this other world, or, where that you can find a place and you can talk and you can show, hey, I actually own this NFT. And everyone's like, oh, that's really awesome, I own this one. It's that community piece that if you're not, you'd miss it.
Look, does that mean fundamentally that there are a lot of people who are alone in this world?
Oh, well, I think we know the answer. Yeah, there is. Absolutely. There absolutely is people who are looking for a connection, and that's actually when I was selling the physical artwork and actually sitting with people, that was absolutely what they were looking for. And a lot of them, some were okay with being alone and some were not. And regardless, that's why they were sitting in front of a piece looking to potentially do with it.
So this has been I enjoyed the start of this talk, and I'm super keen not to end up down rabbit holes. But what I thought we would structure our discussion today was a little bit about your journey into the meta world, and maybe start with Titan Tiki, and then a little bit more about how you see the meta world evolving, and then I'm going to look back around you and your history and how you got into this. So why don't we start with this Titan Tiki movement and community? Like, what is it? What's the dream? Why did you create it, and who created it? Because Luke Ryan, Indigenous Collective, but then there's like you're involved in a lot of things.
Yeah, keeps life fulfilled.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, so Titan Tiki was born out of, essentially, and we shared this before jumping on here. I had an event where my older brother at 47 passed away at one of the first lockdowns, and it kind of, at this tangi, everybody came together, a lot of old friends and new. And as that came in, is actually where it actually first started upon reflection of how do we want to share Te Ao Māori? How do we want to share culture? And at this stage, it was not the metaverse. It was just that idea. How do we want to share? And through a number of synchronicities that, too many happened to be able to say that it was just kept it. I was literally meeting all of these people that were in the metaverse. And still at that stage, it was, oh, yeah, that's really nice, just listening. And I was still looking at how do I play my role with sharing culture. And through the charity work I do, and then reconnecting with my whakapapa and just a number of things, we're doing a lot of journeying around New Zealand, going to sites, going to different maraes, just getting amongst it and just connecting with the land. It actually started to weave over. And at this time, I was learning, okay, what is the metaverse? Or at that stage, what is cryptocurrency, right? I was at that stage, like, what is cryptocurrency? Is it...
As in like last year?
Yeah, as in like last year. So it's over the last couple of years, actually, it first started learning what is cryptocurrency and is it real? And how do I need to...
Is it a Ponzi scheme?
Well, do I need to own one whole coin? I think that's one of the most common things that people ask. It's fractional, but they don't realize it's fractional. So everyone thinks they can't afford it or even have one. Yeah. Anyway, so I ended up meeting one person in crypto, and it kind of cascaded into this kind of snowball of, wow, there's this community. And that's where I come back to it. There's a community of people in crypto that are just super into sharing and seeing how things go.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So talk to me then about Titan Tiki. Like, what is it?
So Titan Tiki is, so from a base roots, the kaupapa of Titan Tiki is to share the culture of Te Ao Māori, to share and give people an opportunity to connect with it in their own way. That is it. So they sit, because it's a choice. It's not saying it has to be this way and it has to be this way. It's more of that choice of how you choose to connect with it is your choice, and it's here to receive. So it's more of an invitation. And at a functional standpoint, it's in a format of an NFT, which I know from your previous podcasts, everyone's getting their head around what that looks like and what it might be, because it's evolving. And we did 1,000 Tiki, and out of that people had the choice to connect with, and it was done with 4 different types of bodies, and that played different roles within a tribe. So the Titan Tiki tribe, and they have different attributes that people may like more than another attribute. So, for example, some of the eyes on the Tiki are power. Some of the eyes are laser eyes. Now, laser eyes is a thing. If you're not in crypto, laser eyes is just a trend, just like saying GM. Everybody, if you're in crypto, that's how you know you can call someone out in the crowd. You go GM, anyone looks back at you, you're like, they're in crypto straight away. So there's these kind of intricate.
What does GM mean?
Good morning. Just right there. Good morning, straight away. So
I took it to be get moving.
Yeah. Well, that's because it's all the stuff you do, right? like myself, you're also got a lot of hats going on too. And it's like, and that's why there's all these kind of different, I think it's quite funny. There's a lot of humor in the cryptocurrency space of how people do, but there's also a lot of risk. And I think that's what gets people a little bit, unsettled. But, going back to Titan, so we were basically sitting together and going, okay, we have these Tiki or Hey Tiki, depending on how you say it, and that want to come into the metaverse. And we were sitting there going, oh, okay, this is happening. And we created the artwork, and we created the NFTs, and it was a very wayfinding experience. So just for everyone, my version of wayfinding is you don't have a plan, but you know where you're going. And every
it's pretty amazing experience, right?
Yeah. So we were literally going from basically point to point, going, what do we do now? And the people would show up. And that's how this was created. Yeah. So for example,
who's we? Like who owns, like what's the
Yeah. So there's a core team of 3 of us that do that. And so and we then have a wider team that we work with to help us do different functions or different things within Titan Tiki. So we would literally be meeting together and would say, okay, great, we need to have somebody who can help us with the blockchain and who's going to help us do the minting process. And then next minute we're on calls with Brazil and Sweden, and then we're pulling it together to help us. They're like, yeah, we'd love to help you. We'll go through different ways to engage with the community, and then you'd get a phone call from someone saying, what are you up to? And then we're like, what are you up to? Do you want to come and help? So it was really this.
Were you surprised at how willing people are to help?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was surprising.
Is it different to the centralized, like to your other world that you know?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's so formal, right? You have to have.
Why is that?
Well, I think it's because it's just the structure and framework that's been created. And whereas if you think about, I kind of see it like dog years. Crypto is just so much faster. It's something I've seen a project come to life that might take someone, and say if he was doing SME or even a startup in, I call it the corporate world, but to say they would need to go and, consult lawyers, accountants, do all the functionals, come up with a strategic plan, put it in place. And that could take 3 months if you're running fast. I've seen a project stand up and a full redesign, a full rebrand in 2 hours happen on a project. And it's just like, that's how fast it is. So, that's why you're always here in crypto. 1 week's kind of like 1 year. That really is like that. And
does that enliven you?
It's actually something I find that I need to balance, because it also can become quite overwhelming. And so one of the things that we had to find with Titan was, what is our pace? What pace do we want to work at, and what do we want to actually connect and do? And that's something that we almost felt like we're in this river, and the river was like, poof, here you are. And then we had to turn around and look at each other and say, hey, wait, we also have a choice here of what pace we want to do and what we want to do. Opposed to getting caught in the current.
How did you deal, or did you deal with any questions around appropriation of Māori images, language?
It's absolutely a really good point, and I see it as it's just one of those things that when you actually get challenged, it's actually out of respect. Now, and that's a mindset of how you can actually handle those conversations, where some people can find that a defensive conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great. We've had a number of questions of, are you Māori? Yeah, actually, a whole team is. But that's a good question. And then it is, where do you come from? Well, that's a good question too. And actually ensuring that where the art was created from, and actually working through the kaupapa of why are we here? What are we doing? Has actually been respected through the protocols. So, there is a lot of a lot of conversations that we have that is, hey, we would like to go down this path, and talking to the right people to say, does that feel right? How would our ancestors feel about that? How do we feel about that? Are really sharing our feelings through it. So it's absolutely expected that that conversation will carry on, and it will continue, where people will say, hey, look, are you doing this just to make money? And it's like, well, actually, making money is okay, but we also want to respect the culture too, and we actually want to give back in the right way. So how do we do that without doing nothing? So, and that's really something of a conversation that we have. And yeah, I quite, you know what, you end up making friends through this conversation too, because a lot of them go, okay, I see where you're coming from. So how can I help?
Yeah.
And but you're not going to make everyone happy, as you know, Andy. We've all come against this. Is that some people are there to play a role, and if you can listen to what they're saying, then you can take some value out of that and carry on.
So we're on the journey of 0 to 10 on the Tiki movement and community. Where are you?
Probably between 0 and 1.
So are you able to share where you see that community and movement going?
Yeah, I mean, parts of it obviously, and parts of it we keep an on, so that they can work out, because they're going to collaborate, because a lot of this is about involving the community. But what we can share is when we have different utilities that we're actually going, because if you think about NFT, and definitely one of the awesome leaders in this is the fluff team, are just like smacking it around utility.
Yeah.
But you start off with, hey, I've got this NFT, which is a digital image. I think everyone gets that. And certain people will pay certain amounts of money for it. Got it.
Yeah.
But then what do I do with it is a big question. And that's where it's about using that NFT in different formats, such as virtual worlds, which I know that's been discussed around, because a lot of people like to, potentially wear a part of their NFT in a virtual world and go and hang out. What people don't realize is hang out with who. And that's where the community piece comes in place. Hang out with the community, get reputation, get cred in the community, make friends in the community. So that's kind of like the glue of all this. We're actually looking at different formats for how we can actually, some people have asked us to potentially have their NFTs in formats like behind me as well.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at that too. We're actually not looking at it. We're actually just about to do it. Yeah. It's quite.
So if I relay that back, that means, generally speaking, Indigenous Collective will probably be doing other NFT projects as well.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
What's your observation of the level of creativity that exists in our Māori people?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's taking that format and making it into something that can be delivered. And that's role. It's saying, if you look at this and people go, great, you've done an NFT project, and I know this will resonate quite quickly with you. Andy is like, okay, what's the accounting? What's the legal? What's the framework that needs to roll through this? How do you continue to operate this? How do you do the marketing? How do you do the comms? Like, there is a there is a framework there that needs to hold this so the creativity can blossom, and that's just something that from old world makes a lot of sense to bring in. So it isn't about saying, oh, crypto's over here and, say corporate or, old business is over here. It never is. It's about what do you want to weave together? What makes sense to be together now? And so that it can actually continue to hold it.
So if I'm one of those, like I'm a 35-year-old Māori artist, how do I engage with Indigenous Collective generally?
Come up with an idea, come up with a concept. And so it would be no different than a creative brief.
Yeah.
Really think about where is it coming from. And there's no disrespect in it, but if you come up with something that's a nice image, that's great. But it's the why. It's the mana behind what you're creating and the reason you're creating that will continue to go into the metaverse deeper. So it's around.
Which is you're talking about depth, right?
Yeah.
Not thin.
Yeah. It's got to have that depth of, okay, this is why, and a lot of people, and this is the same with any art really, is that you can there's art that's created from a technique and that's cool art and it sells really well. But I do find a lot of times with Indigenous art, from what I've experienced personally, is that a lot of it comes from ancestors, your upbringing, the dreams you're having, the experiences that you've been involved in, like that's creating the art, and you just get a different impact.
Do you think that this meta world will create, it's not just going to be about traditional artists finding ways for their art to live in the meta world? It's going to create a whole generation of new artists.
There's no barriers because, in the art world, there are barriers. Artists know this. Like if you're an artist, a young emerging artist, not even young, an emerging artist, and you're going out into the world and you're putting out your heart to the world and saying, you should buy my art. If you went into like a top gallery, well, you know the answer you're going to get. They're going to turn around and they're probably going to say, hey, look, we've already got all these established artists that we know that sell. Sorry, maybe come back in 5 years. Whereas in the metaverse, if you get picked up, it's like, oh, there you go. You've got your community, and you're created. Now, there's obviously risks in some not getting the community, but the barrier is can you take the leap?
Super interesting. Now, how does a young fella from West Auckland, a Westie, end up in this NFT world? Do you want to just share a little bit about your background and career? Yeah,
definitely, Andy. So I started off out west, and like anything, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but my grandfather, my grandfather at the time was in corporate, and he kind of done the corporate thing of being a CEO running companies, and I thought that was probably a good place to start. So I went to uni. I did business, I did IT, and a bit of finance and accounting, and I started off in my first corporate job, and I thought, oh, this is kind of a bit different. I just turn up and they tell me what to do, and if I don't do something right, they tell me off, and I'm like, I feel like I'm still at school, and so I did that for a while. So I was at Carter Holt, it was big corporate at the time, and I just had this philosophy of, I guess I'll just kind of copy what the people who look like they're important do. That was my strategy. It wasn't probably the smartest, but I gave it a go.
And you're mid-20s, right?
Yeah. Started at 19 actually there. And then I was still kind of doing uni at the same time. So I was just kind of full-time uni and working and just did uni at night. Yeah. And I ended up, it was actually quite funny. I got called up to the HR manager's office, and I remember this conversation like yesterday. Said, hey, Luke, who are you? We didn't realize that you work for us, and they've just been making a whole bunch of people redundant. And I said, oh, yeah, well, I'm the guys in the warehouse over there just making sure that's all good. And they're like, oh, well, nice to meet you. How long you been here? Oh, 2 years. And it was quite funny. It's like, well, lucky you don't get paid heaps, you can stay. And then off I went, and I jumped into like 9 roles, and eventually ended up being in one of the managing databases, building servers, ended up in a management accountant role in the head office. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then was there for a year, and then jumped in another role, ended up getting called into the head office for the owning company, which is Rank Group, which and so I was 23, jumped in there, and they said, oh, I remember that one. It's like, oh, we've got a big problem in Memphis. Oh, great. Okay, we'll put you on a plane. You're off. And that was the next day. And I was like, sure. I just said, cool. I remember getting on an airplane, flying business class, not knowing why everybody was wearing these stupid pajamas. Why does everyone wear pajamas on a plane? I'm sitting there just like, oh, this is, And
did you sleep, or did you enjoy business class?
Oh, actually, no, I had a nap. I quite like sleep. I was just trying to work out. It took me about probably 15 minutes to work out how to get the bloody seat down. I mean, I'd never been on any of this before.
Yeah.
And then I ended up flying around the world for 10 years, just basically learning from really smart people how to do more of the mergers and acquisition type activity. So buying and selling stuff. And because I was the young guy through this, I ended up running a team in Australia, running a team in New Zealand, just getting involved in all these things, living over in Chicago for a while. And I just got, spending time in Switzerland. I did 10 countries in 2 weeks. That was one of my favorite trips.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that was.
You must have learnt a lot.
Yeah.
Because, by all accounts, Rank Group, they run it hard.
Yep.
And you learn a lot. It's, a bit like, when I sit with Monty, and Monty Beetham talks about how to be an elite athlete, right?
Mm.
You got to be sharp. So you must have learned so much in that environment.
It was great. It was a really, there were some tough times, but you remember those tough times, and it gives you that resilience when things aren't, when you basically don't have grounding. And it was, and
why leave?
Yeah, well, I remember having that conversation. I said, I was talking to the lads, and I was saying, you're a lot older than me. You guys are, doing, obviously financially secure. You've, got really good, all that good stuff. But I've got this real itch to create something on my own, and I've got this real itch to, step out and do more. And I,
were you married at that point?
Yeah. Married, had a kid, had all of the things that stop you from doing such things, as they say.
Proud of you that you took that leap.
Yeah, well, they said unequivocally, look, do it. Like, I get it. You could stay here and you'd be financially comfortable. Do it.
When was that you made the leap?
That was 2016. Yeah, it must have been 16, 17 that I did that. So my son was 3. So it was pretty.
And you left to start what?
Yeah. So I jumped into a content agency to start a content agency at the time.
Story Park, was it?
Yeah.
BizStory.
Story. Yeah. So we had a go at creating content for businesses online, and so we were doing that, and we
with someone else.
Yeah. Me and my business partner at the time, we kind of did that, and then things started to show. So then we got into the art world, and we ended up getting a gallery in the city, a private gallery, and selling art.
This is interesting. Management account, like IT, management accountant.
Yeah.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Art. Yeah. Like it all fits together.
Yeah. Well, someone said that to me the other day. They're like, I kind of see how you got there. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Sometimes I think, how did I get here? And then I also had a love of technology. I really enjoy that. So I also did the whole charter as an accountant thing. Thought that was probably worth doing. I kind of did it kind of reverse it backwards. But anyway.
Yeah.
And then kind of got into the point of I also have, working with charity that happened. So I ended up on a board, and I was like, okay, I'm on a board, and then I ended up now I'm chairing the board.
Which
and
is
I'm
that
like,
organisation? Is that a hapu?
It's the Sisters of Mercy, actually, in New Zealand.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's it's Catholic. I'm not Catholic, by the way, but I'm a lay person, as they say.
Yeah.
But they do a lot of work with different communities, with women and children.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is actually with Pacifica and Māori. So it was a really, really strong fit for me with my own kind of upbringing of actually doing some healing for myself through that. And I was like, okay, and getting used to governance. I mean, I don't know if many people, like, the governance role is quite a different role to a doing. And it's almost so hard in community development not to do.
Yeah.
And so it's really difficult. And so that's been a really cool journey, because that's given me that kind of connection back to find myself, is going through there. Ended up with a refrigeration business as well, because a friend said, can you help me out? And so, yeah, sure, I can do that. And then also that governance role is kind of how I'm supporting with a managed fund as well. So I'm playing the governance kind of role of making sure that things are done the right way, which is actually part of a lot of what Python Tiki is about protocols. When I think protocols, it's just around, hey, they're a way of doing things. And when you do it that way, you actually feel richer for it. It's not on the other aspect where people say, hey, look, there's a protocol of, for example, when you're being welcomed onto a marae and people go, oh, you've just got to follow that protocol because that's how it is. It's like, actually, it's so when you're getting called on, your ancestors, and everyone has ancestors, can talk to each other before you come on. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. Like, it's a lot of, it's holding it in that kind of philosophy that actually makes it pleasant. And actually,
it's quite interesting, that reflection, because there are people in life who are process driven, who just say that's the way it is, and then there are these others that are guides that say, well, that's the way it is for this reason. And when you get that, like I've got this friend Blaine who teaches me, and has taught me over the years quite a bit around what's in behind it. And it's when you hear that, you're like, oh, I get it. Okay. Right. Yeah, it's not just a silly process.
And one thing that I find is a fascinating discussion that is a rabbit hole is, what is the culture of the metaverse? And I was talking to someone about this and saying, there is.
Well, okay, tell me, what do you think it is?
I'm learning it slowly, because and the thing is, when you go to a place, right? So say you go to another country, you don't go and act. There are certain things that you respect, and you kind of go, okay, that's how you do it, so I'll do it to a point. So there's kind of this balance. But in the metaverse, there's this, you've got people who are like, okay, they're all there and they're not there. Extreme, they've got the pump and dump kind of philosophy. They like to win. They like to do memes. There's this kind of culture, I see culture of way of communicating, that if you start to actually, accept how they do it, then you actually connect in deeper. So it's one of the things that I'm observing personally of what is, like you said, what is the culture? And I'm like, well, the culture for me today is, I know, they like to have fun. They don't, it's like, it's a 24-hour type of thing. And, you're either riding with them or you're not. It's like, it is full on. Like, I find that everyone's like there and they're like super excited, or they're very super sad. There's extreme highs and extreme lows and a lot of levels in there. And sometimes it can be tough. I know a lot of people who run NFT projects that find it really hard to keep up with the community. They just get smashed. And it's like, and it's because the community actually want to go on a ride with you. It's like, hey, I'm here. But they can also be hard to be with sometimes.
When you think of this world of NFTs, what are the NFTs that are stretching your brain cells and visualization skills when you're thinking, whoa, I hadn't, like, that's an out there NFT?
It's around the thought process of how they can be used.
Okay,
That's
so talk to me
what
about
my mind. So I start at ground zero, which is a digital image.
Mm.
But then I see how, and connecting with your previous conversation, like with Brooke, talking about how it can be used in the music industry. So it's that utility of how it can, first off, it stretches my mind on how an artist can change their life through this. That stretches my mind. How it can be functionally used. So it could be through to a form of a subscription model, through to a form of giving people access to things that that they don't have access to, or how it can be integrated into different types of things. Because I mean, it's easy to go virtual worlds. I get it. Like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you can have a virtual gallery and you can just walk in and you can go look at your NFT on the wall. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get where you're going with this, but I can see that it's going to go into augmented reality, if not already, where it is, you're wearing some glasses and you're looking at your NFT. And I just think as well as, I saw the other day where a whole bunch of people running massive events, in New York, and they're bringing all people together. So I just see it as how far can it go to bring people together? That's what's stretching my mind, because they keep on finding new ways to do it. And that really, that excites me.
Challenging question, selfish question. If you were Manaki, what would you do if you were us, as we think about empowering and supporting our small business community in the NFT space? I get partnering with others to help them understand how to get down this path, but I'm talking Manaki itself.
Yeah.
I'm asking intelligent people.
It's cool. I'd look at a couple of aspects. I'd say there's a real community aspect, like community being not just like, how we're talking. There's big communities of being connected and showing them how to be a part of that. Might not have enough time to do that. So what's the next aspect? I'm talking about the small business. There's a lot of education, but that's a hard role, educating people of finding, are they just wanting to know about it, or are they wanting to be in it? And let's take the thing, if they're saying, hey, well, Manaki's there to help you be in it, for example, as an approach or a lens to move in, it would be around, providing a framework or a safe space for them to be in it. It is hard, like it's like it's like basically jamming a startup into like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And some
should we issue tokens?
So this
should
is
we do it?
Yeah. So tokens to me, that's cool. I love this, because I've got, my thoughts on a token is, if you've got a token, you've got, so say you've got 100 tokens. You're like, cool, we've got a token. First question is, what do I get for having that token? And right, cool, got to answer that. Why do I want to hold that token? Because that's going to affect how many people, volume up and down. And it all comes back to, what is the community in that token? So, if you've got a token and you've got to find some people who actually want to buy that token, cool. Sounds good. That's probably going to be the small business community that identifies that makes sense. What do I get if I hold that token? And does it change? Because it can't be stagnant, and that's why you'll hear, and I think it was quite something you were talking with Brooke around roadmap. Tell me what the roadmap is. The reason people want roadmap is they're just like any business. It's like, okay, how are you going to give me some certainty about future revenues? I mean, that's kind of what they're asking, because if you do different things, there's a pretty good, and those things are cool, then that's probably going to mean people are going to buy and sell that NFT, and buying and selling NFTs makes revenue. And so that's where it gets a little bit, but also if you own a token, if Manaki had a token, you also opened yourself up to the risk of being influenced by the community. And so a lot of that says that you have a value in the token. Say your token's $1, right?
Yeah.
And the community, for whatever reason, and it could be community, could also mean the economic environment of cryptocurrency decides that it's going to go down. Well, the value in your token will go down because because they'll move their funds out, and then there'll be this perception potentially that something's not right. Why did the token go down? What did you do wrong? Or what are you going to do new? So it becomes this kind of interesting polarity where you just have to decide where you stand.
Super interesting. If you think of the worlds that you've been in, right, like the hard-nosed commercial world, the social charity world, right, and including, I'm pretty sure you're on the board of one of the iwi hapu that you're connected to, and then you compare it to the meta world that you're into, like, are they the same? Are they different? Like, what do you, when you look at those and go, what do you draw from that?
There's still a way. So I think things you'd say they're more flexible in the metaverse. I'd say the metaverse is okay, but there are really cool concepts like DAOs, right? So like you can come in and you can vote on ways to go forward, but
decentralized autonomous organizations.
That's right. Yeah. So basically everyone can have a say about something, and okay, that's nice, and community is very much like that. It's probably just got less bullcrap in it, to be honest. Because there's this, there's a lot of layers of, we have to do this, but no, there's a lot of people that do things because they've done things. It's just
like rank. Like large organizations generally are rational, logical, right? Small organizations, communities can be quite emotional, right? But those two worlds, one with large resources and access to resources, can be very logic-minded, resource allocation-minded. But when you're a small business, you don't have the fucking resources to be able, and it ends up being very emotional.
Yeah, they lead with their heart. Yeah,
which is not a bad thing, eh?
Well, it's not a bad thing, but you can still fuck it up, right? Like, but mind you, with logical approach, you can still fuck that up too. I'm assuming we've all seen that as well. I think the journey can be more pleasant. If you're
in the small.
Yeah, in the small. Well, and then if you take it with the metaverse, you can. There's a lot more resource, so you're almost pairing the heart with the resource. And that's kind of where it gets a little bit scary. I mean, if you look at some of the projects that have been created this year, the volume of resource that's been presented to some of these projects is tier one.
Have you noticed also on these NFTs, there's starting to be, and maybe it's just because I'm watching it now, you're starting to see NFT projects really struggling.
Yeah, but there's that said, it's because you've got to have a view, and so it's a marathon, not a sprint. But when you're caught in the current, you get caught up in the sprint, and you don't realize that this is something that can continue for 12 months, 5 years, and that's what you're seeing is, there's like any market, the NFT. I think in October when we launched, there was a really good influx in NFTs. And it went up, and then the market had a change where Bitcoin had a really good, strong movement upwards, and that meant that everybody was focused there, and they weren't focused on NFTs. And then when that stops, then the focus moves from there. Then it comes back through different funnels, but essentially ends back up in NFTs, and then you have an upward movement again. So I was actually talking to someone on our Discord today, and it's around that just because you're waiting doesn't mean you're not doing anything. And there is a lot of that where you actually do have to respect that there's better times to do things in NFTs than others so that you can actually work with the market.
It's pretty interesting. I'm just patting my neighbor's dog We've got a compound in our property and their property, and the dog just comes over, jumps the fence 2 or 3 times a day just to say hi. And he actually craps on my lawn. But
I mean, there you go, gift. There's your co-host.
He's been taught well by the owner to do it on my lawn, not on his. Hey, brands that inspire and inform you in your work.
I remember hearing this question. It's more people.
Yes,
but
who inspires you? Give me a person then.
Yeah, I will meet. You know what? I will meet strangers that inspire me. I did go down the rabbit hole of saying, hey, there's big companies of what they do. And I guess different elements. Now, and it's a good question. Let me think. So where I started, I'm just going to do a quick one to answer this. Let's say 10 years ago, brands that inspired me, people would have been, the tech companies of the world doing amazing things. And that was cool. And I thought that was the right thing to think. Of late, what's really inspired me is when I meet a person who can stand when they're getting crushed. So I was at a tangi last night, and they had a really, really heavy thing happen of a person that lost, and I was inspired by the fact that this couple could still stand and actually talk to us, and not be, just crushed by that type of despair. It kind of gives me resilience, but I like to observe situations of people who are interacting in an environment that's shit. Because I really find that's where the gold is. Other people that inspire me are artists that put their heart out, knowing that they might just get smashed.
Yeah.
They'll put their heart out, and it's something that they and they're openly sad about it. They're actually feeling it. Don't get me wrong. There's a level of crazy that everyone has that potentially is hard to hold for anyone else, but it's more around actually watching people be. Courageous isn't the right word, just being authentic and going, yeah.
I think what I feel when I listen to you talk then is it's actually inspiring. I can feel the it's not fortitude, but the enlivening and inspiration that you get from the observation of others.
Yes, definitely.
What surprised you about your meta journey in a couple of years to date?
The number of people that I would be connected with, the level of creativity has probably been, and just like dreaming of what you can do and actually doing it has probably been like 10,000 times more than I thought was ever possible. And
this is what excites me.
It's just like, you kind of sit there and I've going, and it's one of the things if I go right back, I'm like, I have a love personally for Te Ao Māori and my culture, and that's where it was. And I was like, I'd love to share it, but then was I going to be one of those people that always just said, I wish I could have done that? And then it just cascaded, and then it's here. And then it's like, okay, how do we get back? And then it's like, how do we do this? And then how do we do this? And then, can I do this? Can I, and then without it being overwhelming, you look around and you're like, somehow this is all happening,
It's interesting. One of my reflections when I watched back the interview with Brooke, that I was conflicted a bit around what he said. Was one of the things he said is that the communities and the meta need the creativity of Indigenous peoples, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. And then I was like, oh no, does that mean that they're just licensing their IP into other people's communities without fundamentally owning the underlying IP itself? Because that's not a control thesis. I just got worried that they would be treated as commodity players to enrich people's communities, and I don't think Brooke meant that.
No,
but it did worry. I want to see the opportunity for creative artists and creative people to fundamentally own their own. intellectual property and to benefit from that.
And there's always going to be that in the world, right? People are sitting there going, I can make money out of you. And it's, and to do that, I can do that in a way that actually doesn't benefit you. And you know, it is a risk. And I think that as, you know, as a human being, it's about being around people that you know, everyone knows when they're doing something that's not right. I mean, like you just feel it in your gut. You're like, you know, and so if you're with people and you're approaching it and you've got the right people around you to have a good discussion, again, the right advisors, that helps. It's not 100%. Like you're going to fuck things up, but yeah, there is that kind of, there always is that narrative of Indigenous commercialization. And that's where, and if that narrative actually stops culture's legacy being shared, then to me that feels wrong. If that, you know, but if it can actually say, hey, stop, there's a way to do this so you can move forward, then that excites me. And finding the right people that are actually ready to do it. Like it took some time to actually do it. And, you know, I'm sure people would have liked it to come at a higher velocity of do this, do all these cool things, and those things will come when the time's right. And it's quite, and then actually working with artists that aren't trying to run, you know, it's about coming from a place of mana. You can know it.
True. I mean, I'm like Pat, you know, our co-founder of Monarchy, went down the rabbit hole last week on NFTs, and he's produced his first sort of concept for a community. Cool. It is freaking fire, and I'm just like, holy moly. And of course he's learning about the depth that's required, but it is just, for me, visually, when I saw it, I was just like, this is freaking incredible. And of course I'm biased because I love him and I want him to be successful, but I was just like, this is pretty magic. Now, do you own NFTs yourself?
Yes.
Good. I'm not going to ask you how
to create some other, you know, concept NFTs as well, you know, like it's, and, you know, there's different ways to own NFTs. There are people who like to own them and buy them and sell them. And I get it, but I'm just like, oh, I like just hanging out with them, you know?
So you're a holder. You're a holder.
Yeah.
Can I ask you how many Titan Tikis you've got?
Me personally, I've got 5 that I've got.
And if you had to choose one of them and add an artist, a soundtrack, what song, what artist?
Well, I've got, I'd probably, Maisie would be awesome to have him, just to sit with one of the Tiki.
Should ask.
Yeah, there's a few. You know, there's the lads, the LAB lads are pretty. They got some really soulful, you know, and Tiki Tane's awesome. But at the same time, there's other artists around the world too. It's, you know, just sitting with them, like it's that kind of frequency thing, you know, like, you know, I think that there's a big opportunity to have some sound healing with some of the Tiki in the future. I think that's really nice. And sound healing to me isn't like that pure, like, oh, you know, sound healing. I listening to music to me is healing. Yeah,
so true. Hey, how do you have your conversations with your partner and with your son about this world?
Yeah. Well,
do they go, Dad, you're crazy?
Oh yeah, like I had this really cool conversation actually with my son, who was just like,
how old's he?
He's 6, and so my wife's in the corporate world, so she's doing her thing. She's, you know, she's awesome, and so you know, she's got a slightly, you know, more structured world. Anyway, he was getting told, hey, you need to do your schoolwork. He turns around and says, Mummy, I don't need to do my schoolwork. I'm just going to draw on the computer and on paper like Daddy does, because that's way cooler. And I said, oh, crap.
Actually, someone's asked me what's coming up for the Titan Tikis.
Yeah. We've got, so for us, sharing the content of cultural content or Te Ao Māori content has been something that it's been really important, but we wanted to do that in a way that actually had longevity. So we're creating basically a portal where we're going to have karakia, so the Māori blessing, and of the Titan Tiki, and that's going to be sitting there so Tiki holders can connect with it. And it's been
beautiful.
it's all kind of sitting there, but what's been really awesome is that we just really, really want to focus on ensuring our kaupapa is like completely, you know, solid so we can hold it. So we've been doing a lot of wayfinding and facilitating, you know, to actually as an internal group, so that when we are asked questions or challenged, that we have a really strong kaupapa around that. So that's where a lot of time has been, gratefully allocated. And through that, we also have a 3D world. So we have we've shared around that, and we kind of it'd be kind of cool to have potentially a concert in one of the 3D worlds, which would be kind of fun, where everyone can kind of hang out and listen to some sweet beats while wearing.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, right? That's the cool stuff you can do, and you go, oh, okay. You're sitting there in this virtual world looking at some, oh, hey, how's it going? And listening to some sweet music from, we've got a couple of, people we've been that are super keen to do stuff. And
love it.
So it's really nice, but that's kind of like the short-term view. A lot of it's around finding and connecting and involving the community in the journey more. So once we've got our kaupapa like feeling really good, then we actually can go, hey, how would you like to weave in your kaupapa with ours? You know, like what's your journey where, so really building it into a community where things can be done because people actually think it's cool.
Yeah.
You know? And to say.
And has meaning.
Has meaning for sure. Yeah, and that's, that teaches me every day, you know, like, I mean, I know I don't know everything. But actually being open and looking for the invitation. So that's what I call it, the invitation. So an invitation doesn't mean, hey, look, I've showed up to your house, here's an invite. It's more like, okay, if you're listening and observing, then you can actually see where invitations are that can actually be approached to say, I'm seeing this. Is this an invitation for this? Oh, that's great. Let's turn that into a work plan, you know? And
were you this deep and thoughtful when you were in the corporate world?
No. I was
kind of interesting,
It was really interesting because I didn't have the capacity to be, because I was being absolutely smashed and getting, do this, do it in half the time. I remember doing 24-hour days because I thought it was cool, like, wow, I worked a whole day without sleeping. Man, I must be awesome. And I'm like telling myself now, I'm like, oh, if someone said you got to work 18-hour days because that means that you're actually really, you're better than the rest, I would just kind of look at them and I'd be like, oh no, what happened to you? But if, and it's like having time to talk to yourself, having time to talk to that inner child, the inner adult, the inner spiritual person. It can be scary at first, but then it becomes it becomes the only way actually.
It's part of all of that is about knowing oneself, and it's a gift that you've been given on that journey right now. You've given that to yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's super inspiring for others to see that, because it just takes a small step that feels very big at the time, that creates the most unbelievable experience.
Is probably there's the human body telling you that there's something cool. There's a potential there. I mean, within reason, because normally there's different elements of being scared. They're scared because you're doing something dangerous, but internal scariness normally is like someone saying, oh, are you trying to grow?
Hey, take yourself to the 16-year-old equivalent of you at the local high school, or your son in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
What would you say to him? What advice would you give him?
Yeah, I would I would give myself and I give my son the advice is to go where the energy draws you to.
You love it.
Yeah, and it's hard because sometimes it's getting drawn to things that you think aren't right for you.
So you're not going to tell him he has to go to university?
No, not at all. And I'm not going to tell him that he needs to work, but if he wants to, that's great. It's, there is a fundamental kind of patriarchal approach to things in the world in that society. I get it. But I'm not also going to be full hands off because I have a role to play as well. So it's that do things the way the energy is, but really be honest to yourself. It's like, how do you be honest to yourself when you got to call bullshit on yourself and you're kind of giving up or just doing something because you are running from something? And that's kind of where I'm getting better. I'm definitely not like, of saying, hey, are you being authentic? And that's, he teaches me, actually. I've always seen my son as my mentor because he's just got that pure, he knows when I'm calling bullshit on him. Or when I'm doing stuff, he's like, nah. And I'm like, oh gosh, my 6-year-old son is my mentor.
Love it. Hey, I've taken up an hour of your time, and I just wanted to say thank you very much, because for me, whether it's the rabbit hole, the thing that I'm a very curious person, and what these talks do is give me the opportunity to meet some new people and learn about, what is a pretty interesting world that is emerging, and it's right at the beginning. And I just appreciate you being so open and sharing, teaching me some things, and also you made the point that people help in this community, and it's crazy that it's not crazy that they do. It's just awesome that they do.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to actually meeting up in person.
Yeah, same here. It will be memorable, that's for sure, with the challenges we currently have.
Kapai, and thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope you have an amazing rest of the day.
Yeah, you too, Andy. Kia ora.
Okay, mate. Kia ora. Kia ora. See you later. See you, everyone. We're off to another escapade. I've got talks coming up next week with David Yu from Vivi and Aaron. I'm getting ready for that, and also Jessica Mannins from Beyond Games, and a few other people lined up as well. Kapai. Kia ora.
Kia ora.